And you'll notice that there's this whole palm area, and that could kind of be described as a kind of squarish circle. And then you've got all your fingers coming off. And you'll notice firstly that this distance here, my longest finger, the middle one, the swearing finger, is about the same length as the palm itself. And that's going to be our measuring step number 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw a super simple hand as if I was drawing some kind of female anime character. And the hand's not in high detail, we just need to get one out of the way. And I'm going to do that by starting off with what might just be considered a circle. Let's just go round and round like so. Let's just make sure as well that that's in focus. Oh, brilliant. It just about is. And I'm going to have a hand just kind of coming off in this direction. And what I like to do is I flatten off the end of the circle almost into a square, as if the circle itself is sitting inside of a box. And that flat edge becomes all the knuckles for me. So I'm just going to take that circle shape, flatten it off like so. And so it means for me that the wrist is probably coming off of here. And then everything's going up there. And the order that I like to draw my hands in is always start from the wrist, and the hand grows out and the fingers grow off of the hands. Unless the hand is interacting with something, or it's a load of foreshortening where you might start off with the hand first, usually I start from the arm and grow out. So what I like to do personally is I just put in 4 points, roughly equally distant, along this edge. And for me, that just becomes a very rough guiding point of where the knuckles might be. But now that I know the length of the palm, I'm going to take this distance, I'm going to go this distance up again, around about here, and I know that the fingers are going to go no further than this point. So what I can do is, in a very simple sense, when it comes to a palm where all the fingers are together, you can often just map out very simple shapes. So I know that it's roughly going to go up like so on this side, roughly going to come up like so on that side, and the thumb will sit on the top. And with these ideas in mind, you can just grow your fingers out from the end. So where I've got these knuckle joints, I'm going to imagine one finger just comes up like a tube, just going to go all the way up and out, just like so. And obviously it's going to go off into a point, curve off as such. And then when it comes to the first fingers and also the ring fingers as well, they're going to be a little bit shorter, but a very similar thing. So I'm going to have another tube that just comes up here, stops a little bit short, another one that's going to come up around about here, again, stops just short of this line, and the little finger, so useful to have hands, is much, much shorter again. So I'm going to bring this little finger just up, maybe I'm going to have it just come out just a little bit as well, and finish around about here. Now in the last tutorial I did talk about the fact that the finger joints are split in such a manner that the first joint is almost halfway, kind of stops around about here, and then the next one is a little bit smaller, and then the very end joint is the smallest space of the finger, so to speak, and then it just gets brought down a little bit, each finger and so on. Although we're not going to worry too much about that, we are drawing the back of the hand, but this gives you an idea of how we get those fingers in. You can then get your thumb in, and I often do this just by creating a lump that comes off of the side, just a bulge like this. And then there's 2 real stages to the thumb that grows off. One is just the main part of the thumb finger area, and the other is just that very large thumb area off the top. So I can just get that in as another shape as well. And that really is just a super simple hand shape. Let's see how that's doing through the camera phone. Make sure that's nice and in focus. And what I'm going to do is just kind of follow this very basic building block shape to get a few more examples in. This is going to be a relatively quick tutorial with any luck. Now when it comes to doing those female hands, it's often nice to just turn the points just into nails that might just kind of point ever so slightly off of the end. And remember, for the most part, all you've ever got to worry about is this rough outline shape. It's just the outline that you might be keeping with a lot of your drawings, because this is all about just getting a hand shape, a good hand lump off the end of the arm stump. Ooh, gross. But you kind of know what I'm getting at. So let's have another go of exactly this idea, and just have the fingers maybe a bit more further out and splayed. And we're going to just talk about the gaps in between. I'm going to have an arm that's up. And I'm going to have a hand that is maybe just a bit like this, a bit on angle, but you see it from the inside edge. So let's go ahead, again, just making sure everything's on the page. And let's say that's the end of our wrist. And I'm going to have it so that the thumb side of the hand is furthest away and the little finger edge is closest to us. Now I've got this circle, sure, when we're looking flat, but maybe I need to imagine that as being a bit more of a disc. So in this example, this circle probably is going to be shaped a bit more like this. So I'm going to imagine that it still has thickness. So I'm going to create a kind of disc shape. Maybe it's something like this. Again, I'm just going to flatten off the edge of it, where the fingers are probably going to come from. And I'm going to just mark in some knuckles. Because this is foreshortened, they're probably just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way there. And most of it will be covering itself with all the fingers and bits. And the shape of the thumb is probably going to be, again, a lump around about here. And then the thumb's just going to go maybe up and off and do its own thing. So if I just get this thumb out of the way very quickly, it's just kind of throwing off at this point here. And you'll notice I'm separating this thumb into its own kind of rough tubular shape, like so. And drawing in maybe just a bit of a lifeline. So this is where the palm itself creates this line here. This is called your lifeline on your hand. Something like so. And then if you imagine that this thickness, this flat area on the little edge of the hand is going to sort of run up here, we know our little finger is going to grow out the top here. Now, because the little finger is the nearest to us, I am going to start with this, and I'm going to give it a really light bit of curve and bend. So I'm going to go up and just imagine that if this is the length of the palm, the longest finger is probably going to be somewhere up here, that distance again. Just a really loose curving line that helps me understand where the fingers aim out towards. The little finger I'm going to have just kind of come up, and I'm just going to get its various segments in. So I'm going to have it just be sort of one joint from here, and then maybe just kind of curving a bit there, and just a little bit more there. The very end is, again, a straighter line for the back where the nail is, a curve for where the fingerprint part is, and then again, just building up these rough shapes to get that curve in. And then the next finger behind it is going to be maybe much straighter, much pointier. So let's come straight up and out, and up again. Again, just getting that flat line almost curving back and out, just so that it really exemplifies the smooth inside part of the finger itself. Just a little notch and line in to show where things bend. Obviously that's coming sort of right in behind this finger. And then the next finger itself, the longest one, is probably just going to be right up, out there, super long and straight, hidden mostly by everything else. And then the last finger itself as well, maybe just kind of coming up and off here behind everything else. Just to create a hand, which is kind of just gesturing lightly. So to show the curves and folds of the inside of the palm, probably going to do, I think this is the headline it's called, or something like that. But just another line perhaps to indicate the inside edge, like so. Just to get a good gesturing hand shape going out. So hopefully again that gives you that kind of really rough idea. We're just starting from these shapes, we're building up. The thumb you can just have kind of grow a bit more off of the wrist there out of the side. And I will certainly go around and just show you exactly the shapes that we're keeping in a kind of deeper highlight or deeper outline in a moment, because this is full of all sorts of building instructions. Now what a lot of people also like to do is when they're getting their fingers to come out of the hand, is they might just draw the middle lines, or they might just draw circles at every single joint as well. All of these things are absolutely fine. Use whatever technique works for you. And I do think about these circles, but I just tend to imagine them now more than drawing them in. It makes my life a little bit easier.
The first shape is a trapezium, where the top is wider than the bottom, and this represents the palm of the hand. So the width of this trapezium determines whether you're drawing wide hands, commonly used for male hands, or slender hands, commonly used for female hands. Then we're going to draw a curved line on top of the trapezium that extends down on both sides. So you can actually change the steepness of this curve to draw the fingers either together or apart. And then draw 3 more of those curves equally spaced above. So these lines will help us draw the fingers. And a good thing to note is that the height of the tallest finger is roughly the same height of the trapezium that we just drew. And also, when drawing these lines, also note that on one side, the lines will meet at a point, whereas on the other side, the lines remain parallel to each other. So the side where the lines meet at a point actually determines where the pinky will be located. Next, find the bottom center of the trapezium and draw 5 vertical lines that fan out all the way to the very top curve. However, only 4 lines actually reach the top curve. The line for the thumb only reaches the second curve. So these lines represent the fingers and the thumb. And the last basic shape that we will use is a circle. So draw large circles where the vertical lines intersect with the trapezium. These represent the knuckles. And then draw small circles where the vertical lines intersect with the curved lines. These represent the joints and tips of the fingers and thumb. Now that we have the shapes and guidelines, we can actually start to add the outline, which is basically like connecting the dots, and eventually we end up with something that resembles a hand. For details, you can add ovals for the nails as well as lines to represent the joints. You can darken the outlines, you can add shading, but I won't go into too much detail with the shading for this tutorial because this mainly focuses on proportion as well as a general concept of how the hand moves. So do take note of the shapes and guidelines that I've just mentioned, since we will be using these to create a range of different hand poses.